Okay, so it looks like we have everybody, so we can get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Today we're going to be teaching you an introduction to Python. We will also be making a copy of these slides available later for everyone who comes to this workshop. So if you would like to get a copy of these slides, as well as potentially updates about our future sessions, make sure you fill out this form. We'll also be sharing it with you at the end so that you can fill it out.
Hey everyone. So we are a step ahead, an organization that teaches coding, web design, and robotics lessons through workshops and in-person and online lectures. Our sessions are free and open to everyone, and there will be a form at the end, like Narathi said before, to fill out if you would like to receive a copy of the slideshow. Still, it's a good idea to take notes as we go through each slide. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Okay, so moving on to our agenda for today. First, we're going to start off with a brief introduction to Python and go over our objective. We'll get set up on Collab, a free cloud-based coding environment. Then we'll discuss data types and the basics of Python. And then we'll combine all the concepts we've learned to create a fun project. And finally, we'll wrap up the workshop.
For an introduction, websites created using various coding languages. As a side note, if you want to see the code behind the websites you're using, you can press Ctrl-Shift-I and go to More Tools and Developer Tools. Today, we'll teach you the basics of one coding language, which is Python. You can take this knowledge to create whatever you want, not just a website. This is most of your first time programming in Python, so it might be frustrating, but make sure not to give up and try your best. Remember, practice makes perfect.
All right, let's start by editing the notebook. So the tool that we plan to use today is Google Colab. Please follow the following instructions in order to be able to open a new notebook where we can write our code. The first step is to go to the link provided, which I can also enter in the chat. It's https://collab.research.google.com/. Once you press on that link, press on the New Notebook button, which will be at the bottom right of your screen. It should automatically sign you into Google, but if it doesn't, then sign in with Google. If you don't have a Google account yourself, you will probably need a Google account, so ask your parents or anyone else if they can sign in for you. And make sure to type done in the chat when you're done. Okay, I see some of us finishing up. Let's wait 2 more minutes so that everyone else can finish.
Which button are you referring to, Kenji?
Okay, so you went to the link, which is collab.research.google.com, right? Okay. Okay, I think most of us are done. So let's move on to the next slide. But if anyone needs any help, feel free to private message me and I can help you out.
Okay, now we're just going to teach you a few things about how to use Google Collab before we start. Next slide, please.
Okay, so Collab has two different types of blocks. You have code blocks and text blocks. So code blocks are where you're going to be doing most of your programming, and text blocks are where you're going to write things that won't necessarily affect the program. So I know most of you aren't familiar with programming, but for those of you who are, your text blocks are sort of like your comments. You can leave those in there for as instructions or as clarifiers for how a piece of code works, but they won't actually affect how the program runs. And you can find both buttons at the top left of your screen. Just type in chat if you guys are able to find it. Great. So seems most of you have found the code and text blocks, so we can move on now. But again, feel free to ask any questions.
Okay, once you've written your code, the next part to executing it is to run it. So on Google Colab, there's 3 ways to do this. The first one is by going to your code, and on the very left, there should be a play button similar to YouTube. Or if that doesn't work, you can use Control Enter or the Control Shift Enter shortcuts on your keyboard. And there's also another method. You can go to runtime on the top left and drag down the menu and click run selection. So those are all just ways to run your code after you've written it.
Okay, so now we're going to discuss the basic data types in Python.
So Python has many ways to store information, and as a coding language, the machine needs to know what type of information you're trying to store. So the different ways are numbers, including integers and floats, booleans, which are true or false values, and strings, which will store letters and words. These are stored in what's called variables, but we'll get to those later. Okay. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, it seems we're good.
Okay, now Sahiti is going to talk about numbers in Python.
Okay, so there are two different types of numbers. The first is int, and the second is float. So you might ask, what's the difference? Well, integers are whole numbers and negative numbers. So -3, 0, 5, 12, they're all whole numbers. Meanwhile, what are not integers are numbers that are fractions, decimals, or mixed units. So 1/2 or 0.3 or something of a type. Now, int is the short form of integers. And if Python is given a non-integer that is terminating, such as 1.5, it would just convert it to an integer. So it would just become 1. If it's given a repeating decimal, such as 3.33333 forever, it would take the numbers before the decimal points as its answer. So note that it doesn't round down, it would just take the points before the decimal point. In floats, it can take fractions and decimals, and it will convert the fractions into decimals. So it can understand only ending decimals. So if it's 1.5, it will leave it 1.5. It won't change it. At the bottom, you can see some pictures. For example, in 0.5 would become 0, versus for float, 0.5 would stay 0.5. Similarly, for int 1/3, it would be 0, versus for float 1/3, it would convert to 0.33333.
All right, next we have Boolean values. A Boolean is a data type with two possible outcomes. They are true and false. For example, the statement 2 + 2 = 4, as we know, is true, while the statement 3 + 2 = 4 is false. Python also has a procedure to evaluate Boolean values when there are two statements or multiple statements. Keep in mind this procedure might be a little bit complicated, so don't be too worried if you don't understand it all the first time. So if you have two different statements and an and in between them, both statements have to be true in order for the overall answer to be true. Otherwise, it's false. For example, if we look at the example, we have 2 + 2 = 4 and 3 + 2 = 4. 2 + 2 = 4 is true, 3 + 2 = 4 is false. So we have true and false. In this case, both statements are not true, so it evaluates to false. Now, if we have two statements and an or in between them, both statements have to be false for the answer to be false. Otherwise, it's true. For example, if we look at our second example, we have 2 + 2 = 4 or 3 + 2 = 4. Now, 2 + 2 = 4 is true, while 3 + 2 = 4 is false. So this is a true or false, which evaluates to true since there's an or in between them.
Okay, the final data type we have in Python that we're going to cover today is letters and words. Letters and words are grouped into a data type called strings, and they're usually expressed in the form of quotes. You can use double quotes, single quotes, or triple quotes depending on the situation that you're writing the code in, and strings can cover more than one line. The way things are numbered inside the string starts from 0. So if you have a quote and then something immediately right after it, that index is number 0. So if you have the word hello written in quotes, H's position is going to be 0. And E is going to be 1, L is going to be 3, and etc.
Okay, so now that we are familiar with Google Colab and understand the different data types in Python, let's dive into programming.
So the first statement we're going to talk about is the print statement. So many of you might already know printing is basically, it will put out what you put. So how does Python know what to print? Well, you would write print and then put 2 parentheses beside it. Inside the 2 parentheses, you would put whatever you'd like. Note that the space between the print and parentheses doesn't affect your code, but leaving the space makes it easier for others to understand your code. When printing a string, you would use quotes, so either single or double. It would be, for example, print double quotes hello, or print single quotes hello. But we can't have a mix, like print double quote hello single quote, or print single quote hello double quote. Remember to not use quotes for numbers or booleans. So if you were to print 5.2, it would just be print 5.2. Printing a number, an asterisk, and an icon will display the number of icons. So if you did 3 asterisk and then A, with A being a string, it would print A 3 times. So an asterisk is similar to multiplying, where it would multiply the number of times you did A. Note that capitals do matter. So you don't want anything in print to be capitalized. You want all of them to be lowercase, or else Python will not understand the program. Now for the U try. Select the plus code button, which is going to be at the top left of your screen, and write a program that will result in the computer typing hello world. Type done in the chat when you're done. An additional challenge is to find out what's wrong with this piece of coding and write your answers in the chat once you're done. Let's take 2 minutes to do this.
Sheriff, do you mind showing what your line of code is? When when Python does not understand code, it will return an error, and that can help you fix it. Okay, good job.
Okay, for those of us still working, last 30 seconds. Okay, we're done with our 2-minute timer, but if you need more time, feel free to work on it a little longer. Let's look at the solutions now. For the you try, the solution was print quotes and then either double or single quotes and hello world. For the challenge, I saw many correct answers in the chat, and some of them would be that the print should all be lowercase and that there should be quotes around hi. So great job. I saw lots of good answers in the chat.
Sometimes when we are coding, we'll have to write text notes to provide explanatory information about the code. These descriptions can help us and other people understand our code in the future and will be ignored by the computer when the code is run. These annotations are called comments. In Collab, we can use the plus text button to write descriptive text about our code. However, other programming languages don't support this option. So instead, programmers write comments about code within their code itself. In Python, we use the hashtag to indicate a comment. You know you've correctly written a comment if the text turns green, as displayed on the screen. The last thing to remember is that Python doesn't really support multi-line comments. So if you're trying to comment out several lines, you'll have to put a hashtag in front of each line. So now we want you guys to try writing a comment explaining what your line of code just did. Type done in the chat when you're done. And if you finish early, you can try challenging yourself by making another comment on a separate line explaining what the print does, what the print statement does.
Oh, Sudi, I can help you in private comments.
Okay, I see people finishing up, but for those of you still working, you have around 30 seconds. Okay, so it looks like the 2 minutes are up, so let's check our answers. So using a comment, we were trying to describe the line of code hello world. And if you used a hashtag and then wrote something along the lines of printing the words hello world onto the screen, great job. If your comment doesn't look like our example above, a good tip is to check whether your intended comment turned green. And as for the challenge, if you wrote something along the lines of the print statement outputs the words within the quotes on the screen, great job.
Okay, so now that we know how to do print statements, let's revisit our data types earlier and talk about how you can change and manipulate the information that's in the data types. So we've got Python has what's called math and logical operators, and these operators can be used to change or modify information found within variables. And you can try out the operators for yourself to see what they do. For example, you could do 2 plus 2, and that math statement would give you 4. And there are also a lot of other things you can do that you think may not be possible. For example, adding two Booleans together. So feel free to take your time and just experiment how each operator works on different data types. And if you have any questions or are confused about what an operator does, just feel free to ask them in the comments.
Okay, I think we can move on from our math and logical operator slide. So variables are one of the most basic types of, variables are a way to store data, and it's used in almost all programming languages. And I think a lot of people here know what they are. So can you just type in the chat if you know or if you've heard of what variables are? Okay, it looks like a couple of us know what they are. Okay, like X and Y. So X and Y is commonly used in math to represent the X and Y coordinates on a plane. It's kind of similar here, but we're setting that variable to what we want, and in math, we're trying to find it through equations. So in simple words, a variable is symbols, letters, or numbers. They can be in combinations, but they're different types of data sets. Like as we discussed, letters and words, Booleans, numbers. And some quick examples of variables are X, like we got the comment for that. And ASAP is a name for the variable in letters, and then X is also letters. Okay, in the first example, the variable contains an integer, and in the second one, it contains a string because it's made up of letters. So to print variables, you're gonna do the same exact steps, but you're gonna take off the quotation marks on the name of the variable. So if you want to print ASAP, you would type out print and then parentheses ASAP without any quotations. But if you'd want to add letters before the words in the variable ASAP, you would put those in quotation marks. So any words that you literally want to type out, you're going to put in quotation marks, and any variables you want to type out, you're not going to use quotation marks. And variables you can also change variables. So you can use plus, minus, divide, multiply, all normal operators and math operators to change your variable values. And you can also set your variable values to something else using equal sign. And there's two uses for the equal sign in Python and almost all coding languages. There's a single equal sign, single equal symbol and two right next to each other. The single equal sign is setting the variable to another value, and the double equal sign is checking if both sides of the equation are the same.
Okay, so now it's your turn to try. So create a variable called my_number with any integer value of your choice. And if you want a challenge, you can also try increasing the value of your variable by 5 using the mathematical operators we mentioned. We'll give you guys 2 minutes to work on this.
Okay, we can move on to the answers. So the answer for the first question, your code should read my_number, space equals space 13. And your challenge was to set your number and add 5 to it. So your code should have one equal sign because you're increasing the value.
All right, now let's talk about lists. So a list is similar to a variable except that it stores multiple values. For example, the data types we talked about earlier, such as strings, integers, and booleans. These lists are very similar to the lists we make in real life. For example, a grocery list. And to create a list, you type the name of the list followed by multiple values within brackets. For example, things is equal to open bracket, open quote, banana, close quote, comma 3, comma, open quote, hello, close and then close the brackets. So the name of the list is things, and the things inside the square brackets is what the list contains. In this case, banana, 3, and hello. A very important aspect of lists is to keep in mind that lists begin with 0 instead of 1 like we're typically used to. So in this case, the value banana is the 0th item of the list, the value 3 is the first item of the list, and the value hello is the second item of the list. In order to extract a random value from a list, you'd use the random choice command. For example, random choice things would pick a random value out of the list things, so either banana, 3, or hello. And in order to add a value to a list, we would use the append value command. Append is just a fancier way of saying we're adding the value to the end of the list. So if we're trying to add the word scooter to the end of the list things, we'd do things append scooter, and this would add it to the end of the list. So now we want you guys to try creating a list called my_food and typing your 3 favorite foods as the items in the list. Like usual, tell us you finished the task by typing done in the chat. And for a bonus challenge, add an item of your choice to the end of the list. Okay, 2 minutes are up, so now let's check the solutions to this you try. So you guys may have had different favorite foods than I do, but as long as you type the list my_food followed by a single equal sign and brackets containing your 3 strings, awesome. And for the challenge, if you typed my food period append, and then in parentheses, your string that you're trying to add to the end of the list, great job.
Okay, input is the form of communication between the program and the users. So one common example of this is like when you're filling out a form online, like giving all your details, or like using an online calculator to give you the answer to a problem. Those are all forms of using input to generate an answer as an output. So to get an input from a statement, we're going to be using the x.input. We're going to be writing x.input before our sentence that we want to display. It doesn't have to be a sentence. You can put anything in it. It just depends on the data type. So what's your strings and all that. We can set the input value to a variable as well. So if you want to display, for example, a variable that you made that's in your code, and it says, what is, like taking example from the list, what is your favorite food? If we want to display that, and the variable that has the value, what is your favorite food, is named X, you can just write X into the parentheses, and it will display the value of your variable. To name and, okay. So for naming an input, we're gonna write name, and then whatever name you set for the input, it could be anything. It could be whatever you think, whatever the answer that you expect back from them. If you're expecting a type of food, you might want to set it to favorite food equals input, and then your question. Input for that, and you can name it whatever you like. Oh wait, sorry. Name that input as favorite number, favorite underscore number. Okay, time's up, and these are the answers to our questions. So for the first one, we wanted to set a variable called favorite number, or no, we're gonna set, yeah, a variable called favorite number into their input for the question, what is your favorite number? So for example, if you ran this code, the user would see the question, what is your favorite number? Input it, and whatever they gave, whatever they inputted, right? That would be the value of favorite underscore number. Okay, yeah, and if you wanted to print it, remember, don't use quotations. That's a common mistake. That's how you differentiate between strings and variables. Variables don't have quotations around them, and strings do.
Okay, so let's move on to string concatenation. Well, actually concatenation of any data type for that matter. So through a method called concatenation, you can add two or more of the same data type together. This is useful for things like joining multiple strings together, but you can also use it on other data types. You can use both plus signs and commas for this. And with a plus sign, you're going to add them together, but there's not going to be a space between them. With a comma, you can join two pieces of data together and have a space between them. Just know that when it comes to math and integers and floats, you can't use a plus sign because Python will confuse it for addition. All right, so here's your challenge. You're going to add these two strings together. Hi, my name is, and then you're going to add your name onto the end of it. And for an extra challenge, you can find two mistakes in this print statement. Okay, so our time is up. Anyways, here's the answer to the previous slide's challenge. So of course your name isn't Harry Potter, but if you substitute your own name in there, then hopefully your answer is still correct. And as for the challenge, the issue was that we had workshop with plus and not the comma, so there would be no space in between them. But there is actually a way to have a space in between them. If you're using a plus sign, you would just put a space at the end of the string, but that's quite inconvenient, which is why the comma exists.
All right, thanks, William. So now we're going to talk about and introduce a concept known as if-else statements. If-else statements carry out different actions depending on whether something satisfies a certain condition. There are three different kinds of if statements, although not all three have to be used at the same time. The first is the general if statement, and these normally come first. The next is an else if statement, which comes after the first if statement, and basically it presents another possibility if the first condition is not met. And the last type is the if of the if statements is the else statement, and it is the last statement that is printed and is usually run if no other conditions are met. For example, we can have the code if x is equal to 5, print hello, else if x is equal to 3, print what, and else print error. Make sure to include the colons at the end of each if statement, otherwise the computer will get confused. Also note that to compare values for equality, you have to use the double equal sign rather than the single equal sign, which we just learned about. And finally, keep in mind that you can add more than one condition to an if statement. For example, if x and y, or if x or y. Now it's time for you guys to explore if-else statements. Try creating a variable x and write a blank if-else statement for 3 different values of a variable x. Type done in the chat when you're done. And the challenge this time is to write print commands inside each of your if statements so that something or anything will be outputted when a condition is met. Your time starts now. And if you're experiencing any problems, let us know in the chat. Okay, your 2 minutes are up, so now let's review our work. So if your answer followed the format of the first image displayed, good job, that's right. Make sure that when you're using if statements, you include the colons after each statement. Also note that the solution doesn't have an else statement at the very end, but rather an else if. So in this case, you can have as many else if statements as you want after the initial if statement. For the challenge, if you printed something after one of the if statements like the image above, that's correct too. For example, if x equals 5, we printed hello.
Now I'll go into indexing. An index is essentially a position an item is found in a list. In real life, when we make a list, we have an item in the first position, in the second position, the third position, etc. The same thing goes with lists in Python. The only difference is that in Python, the indexes start at 0, so you have the 0th position, and then the first position, and then the second position. So, in regards to indexing, there are 2 different things we can do. The first is to find the position of a certain part of a list. For example, in the first example, we have print flowers.index rows. What this does is, in the list flowers, it looks for the index of the item rows. It looks for the position of rows. So we're at the name of the list, .index, and then the item that we're looking for. So in this case, rows is at the 0th position, so that would output 0. Now, based on the index, we can also find the term that occupies that position. For example, in the second example, we have print flowers, and then we have square brackets, and we have the value 2 inside. Now what this does is it looks for the item in the second position in the list flowers. So in this case, roses in the 0th position, sunflowers in the 1st position, and tulips in the 2nd position. So this would output a value of tulip. Now it's your turn to try. For this activity, take the food list you created previously, or you can create a new list, and write a program that can locate the position of the first string or word. Make sure to type done in the chat when you're done. Also, for an extra challenge, according to Python, what is the location of this string? Write a program that can show that. We'll give you 2 minutes to work on this. Now it's time to review the answers. So for the you try activity, your answer should look something like this. You should have a list with some different items, and you should be using the square brackets to extract a particular item from that list. And for the challenge, your solution should look something like this. You should have a list, and you should be looking for the index of a particular item in the list.
Okay, so let's move on to while loops. So loops in general can be used to reiterate or repeat through a section of code as long as the condition is true or not met. For example, if I had a variable x and a condition that says, as long as x is not greater than or equal to 3, I'm going to keep printing hello. And of course, you could have something in your program that would keep incrementing x upwards until it reaches 3, and then the while loop would break. And keep in mind that with loops, you must have a colon at the end of the condition to signify that to signify where the condition stops and the code you want to repeat starts. Oh, and one more thing. To check for equality, you need to use the double equal signs because a single equal in Python is called an assignment, not an equality check. Okay, so you can try it for yourself. Create a variable x and a blank while loop for any value of x, okay? And when you're done, type in the chat when you're done. And for an extra challenge, you can write the print commands inside the while loops and it can print whatever you want. Just know that if you don't have a way to meet the condition, you'll have an infinite loop. So be sure to add a way to meet the condition. Okay, so that's our time. So the answer to this is while x is equal to 5, but you could have done anything for yours. You could have had x is greater than or x is less than, and any sort of integer value. And for the challenge, you could have had a print statement with anything inside it. And for ours, we put, how are you inside the print statement?
All right, now that we've covered quite a bit of content, it's time to take a quick 5-minute break. Make sure everybody is back by 6:43. All right, it's now 6:43, so make sure everyone starts coming back. We'll give everyone a minute to get back. All right, we'll move on then.
Okay, so the next concept we're going to learn is changing variable values. So what if you want to add, subtract, multiply, divide, or do something else to your variable? Well, Python has a way to do this. Unlike while loops, the number of repetitions to be done is known prior to receiving the result. And I know that might not really make sense at this point, but it's okay. It's not very important for beginning stages, but as you get more advanced into Python, it will make more sense. So how would you change your variable? For example, x equals x plus 1. So if my initial number was 1, 1 equals now 1 plus 1, which is 2. So you can see an example program that we have here where y equals 0. As long as y is less than 5, and then we have the colons, y equals y plus 1. So since 0 is less than 5, 0 equals 0 plus 1, so it's 1, and you would print that value. So like that, it does it until it prints 5. Then 5 is no longer less than 5. So then it stops the program. Let's do the utry now. Instructions. Write a program that will display the numbers 1, 2, and 3. So in the previous page, we had 1 to 5. Now you're just doing 1, 2, and 3. And type done in the chat when you're done. For the challenge, write another program along with the first one that outputs numbers from -10 to 10. So all the numbers in between -10 and 10. Let's start the 2-minute timer. Okay, we're at our last 10 seconds, and yes, for the challenge, you can use print commands. Okay, let's look at the solutions. So the answer to the utry was y equals 0, while y equals less than 3, y equals y plus 1, and you would print y. So that would print the values 1, 2, and 3. For the challenge, The answer would be y equals negative 11. And while y is less than 10, and then you would put the colon, y equals y plus 1. So because negative 11 is less than 10, y equals negative 11 plus 1, which is negative 10, and it would print that. So if you did the challenge a different way, there are multiple ways to do the challenge, but as long as you get the numbers from negative 10 to 10, your program is correct. For loops. So for loops are a different type of loops, just like while loops. At the beginning stages of Python, the difference might be hard to understand, but don't worry, it will make more sense as you go a little deeper. So for loops, repeat a piece of program as long as the statement is true. And unlike while loops, the number of repetitions to be done is known prior to receiving the result. So here's an example. You would put for x in range, and here I just put the random number 7, and then colons, print x, and x equals x plus 1. So the x equals x plus 1 statement is actually not needed because it will automatically increase the numbers by 1, but we put it in it to make the code easier to understand. So because indexing starts at 0, Python automatically assumes that we're starting at 0 because 0 is in the range of 7, and by range they mean less than 7. It would print 0, and then it would add 1 to it. And that's how you see the answer. Remember to put parentheses around the number, whatever you put after the in range area. An important thing is to not forget the colon, because if you forget it, then Python will not understand your program and it will lead to an error. So one way to know for sure that your colon is there is that it should indent the next line. And do not take out the indent if it's there. You want the indent to be there. Let's try another try. So for the instructions, we're going to write a for loop that will output the numbers 0, 1, and 2. So we have a hint on the board, which is for blank in range blank. So by filling out the blanks, you'll be able to get to this answer. Remember to type done when you're done. For the challenge, you're going to find 3 errors in the program below. When you find the errors, write them in the chat. Let's start the 2-minute timer. Okay, we're looking at our last 30 seconds. Okay, time's up. Let's look at the solutions. For the U-try, the solution was for x in range, in parentheses 3, colon, print x. So like I said earlier, you don't have to put the x equals x plus 1 because it will automatically do that. But if you put that, that's good as well. For the challenge, I saw lots of good answers in the chat. Some of the popular ones I saw were the range spelling and that there should be parentheses around 2. And additionally, the semicolon should actually be a colon.
Now let's talk about functions. Functions are actually something that we use in our daily lives. For example, when we give someone the command tie your shoes, what we're actually telling them is to lift one lace of their shoe, lift another lace of their shoe, cross them over, bring one under, and pull. However, every time we tell someone to tie their shoes, we don't have to repeat all these instructions. Instead, we just repeat the big command of tie your shoes, under which all these instructions are automatically saved in their brain. We have a similar situation with Python. Some of the commands we've been using so far, such as print, integer, float, and input, these are all functions that are inbuilt. However, we can make our own functions too. In order to do this, we need to define our function by using the shortening def followed by the name of your function, parentheses, and a colon. Press enter, and on the next line, you can write the commands inside the function. So as you can see here, we have def, and then the name of our function in this case is practice function. In the previous example I mentioned, the name of the function would be tie your shoes. And then we have a parentheses and a colon. And on the next line, we have the commands that our function outputs. Now, the def part defines the function, but if you want to run the function, you need to write the name of the function and follow it with the parentheses. Then the function will run appropriately. Now it's your turn to try. For the instructions for this activity, program a function that will result in the number 13 being outputted. Type done in the chat when you're done. For the challenge, make a function in which the user inputs a number that the function will add 5 to. Keep in mind that these activities can be done without the use of a function, but we want to practice being able to use functions, which is why we assign these activities. We'll give you guys 2 minutes to work on it. All right, so now let's go over the answers. So for the U-try activity, your answer should look something like this. you have def and a function with the name of your choice, followed by parentheses and a colon. And on the inside, we have print 13. And when we run this function, which we do by writing the name of the function followed by parentheses, we should get the value of 13. This is the answer to the challenge.
Okay, let's move on to the next concept, which is casting. Casting is a very simple concept once you get the hang of it. It's basically converting one variable type into another type. So we learned of strings, floats, and int. So to convert one from another, you would use casting. So let's say you are trying to make the number 5 into a float. You would write float and then 5. And that would basically make 5 into 5.0, since float likes decimals. What if you're trying to make the same number into a string? You would just put str5, and that would print 5 with quotes around it, because now it's a letter or word. What if you want to make the number 5.2 into an integer? Well, since integer can't take decimal values, it would just convert it to 5. Now let's do the utry. Let's make the number 13.5 into a number without any decimals. The hint might be to use int. Type done in the chat when you're done. For the challenge, make this whole number that you produced into a string. Okay, last 30 seconds. Okay, let's look at the solutions now. The solution for the utry was int 13.5, and that would have made it 13. For the challenge, we just put str around all of that, and that made it 13. Some of you might have just put str and then 13 inside the parentheses, which is okay, but this is a more recommended way.
Now we'll be getting into some other useful information. To begin with, in Python, indents are needed in the line after the if, while, or for statements. For example, I'll go to one of the previous slides to show an example of this. So over here, we have our for loops that we used in previous slides. As you can see, we have our for statement over here. And in the line inside the for statement, we actually have an indent. It doesn't start at the same position as the for. This indent is needed for the program to work accordingly. I'll go back to our slide now. So in order to create this indent, you can use, it should automatically form, but in the case that it doesn't, you can use the spacebar or the tab button. But keep in mind, you cannot use a mixture of both. In addition, in Python, you can import various modules which will allow you to use new statements. For example, there's a module called random that you can import, and if you import that, you can use the random.choice statement, which can pick a random item from a list. If you want to find the length of a string or variable, you need to use the len function. So you write len, and inside circular parentheses, you write the variable or the string that you want to find the length of. And in this case, length means the number of letters. You can also use conditional tests to find out if a letter is part of a word or a list. For example, here we have if a in happy. Now when this statement is run, what it will do is it will look for the letter A in the word happy.
So with all this newfound knowledge, let's try creating our own project out of Python.
So before we start, does anyone have any questions on what we covered so far? I'll give you guys a minute to type up or unmute. Okay, I don't see too many concerns, so we'll move on. So today we're going to be making a simpler version of Hangman without the visual representation. We'll go line by line and give you verbal clues on what to program. After a few seconds, we'll reveal the right answer, and you can correct your errors if there are any. So, the first step is to import the module random. We'll give you guys around 1 minute to work on this, and make sure to let us know in the chat when you're done. Remember, we have to use import, and the name of the module is random. So let us know in the chat when you're done. Okay, so I'll reveal the answer now. So your program for this should look something like this. It should just say import random. So you can correct your errors or fix anything if you need to. For the second step, you're going to make a list called words. Now this list can include any words of your choice. They can be long, short, and they can be about anything. Just make sure that you have multiple words in the list. We'll give you guys some time to do this. Make sure you let us know in the chat when you're done. Okay, I will now reveal the answer for this step. So your program doesn't have to look exactly like this, but it should look something like this. You should have a list named words, and you should use a single equal sign, and you should have square brackets, and you should have several different words. You can use either single quotes or double quotes, and you should have commas separating those different items of your list. So now we'll move on to the third step. Now you're going to create a variable called word that picks a random word from the list. Now, as a hint, remember that to pick a random word from a list, you need to use the random.choice command. So you guys can take a few minutes to try this. Let us know in the chat when you're done. This step might have been a bit confusing because we didn't go super in-depth about the random.choice command, but it should look something like this. So you should have a variable called word, and then using a single equal sign, you should set that equal to random.choice, and inside the parentheses, you should have a word. So words is the name of our list, and word is the variable that we've created. Somebody in the chat asked if we can go to step number 1. So as you can see on the screen, step number 1 is to import the module random. So for that, we just have to write import random. That's the code that we have to use. Now for the next step, we're going to create an empty list called guest_letters. As the game progresses, the player's guesses will be stored here. But as of now, the game hasn't started yet, so this list should be left blank. Let us know in the chat when you're done with this step. Okay, so I will go over the answer for this. So the name of your list should be guest_letters, and then using a single equal sign. And you should set that equal to 2 square brackets, and there shouldn't be anything inside because the player hasn't made any guesses yet. So for now, it should just be blank. So this is what an empty list looks like. For the fifth step, we're going to create a variable called tries, and we're going to set it to 10. Essentially, this means that the player has 10 tries. Later in the game, we'll subtract this value if the player makes wrong guesses. You guys can take a few minutes to work on this and let us know in the chat when you're done. Okay, so I will really answer for this step now. It should look something like this. Tries is equal to, with a single equal sign, 10. And for the sixth step, we're going to create a variable called guessed, and we're going to set this variable to false, since the user hasn't guessed yet. So we'll give you guys a little bit of time to work on this. Make sure you let us know in the chat when you're done. Okay, we will reveal the answer for this step now. So your code should look something like this. We have a variable called guessed, and that's equal to false. Keep in mind that false does not require quotation marks since it's a Boolean value. It is not an int. It's not a string. All right, we'll move on to the next steps now.
The next step is to make a print statement that tells the player the length of the word. Remember that this changes for each word, so you might want to use the length function. Oh, and if you could write down in the chat when you're done, that would be great. Okay, let's reveal the program. It would be print, and then in parentheses and in quotes, the word contains a comma, len word, so like that would tell you the length of the word, comma, letters. You could also use pluses and then put some extra spaces. That would be okay as well. For the next step, we want to write a statement that prints the word, represented as asterisks or another icon. So we don't want to show the actual word. We just want to show them the asterisks or like, so that they don't know what the actual word is. And that can be their guessing. So something that you might want to think about is when we first talked about prints and how we could use asterisks there. Another hint is that you would need to use the len word command in this. Okay, so the answer would be print and then len word and then an asterisk for times, and then you would put the actual icon times. So the number of letters in the word, which let's say you were doing cat, it would be 3. So do 3 times asterisk. So there'd be 3 asterisks. Moving on to the next step, we need to create a while loop, which will repeat as long as the user has tries and hasn't guessed the word. So this one's a little bit harder to do, so we will give some additional time. A small hint for this is that you might want to think about, for this statement to be true, the user must have tried at least once, and their answer or their guess should be false. So the answer to this is wild guess and then 2 equals signs, so equals equals false. And tries is more than 0, and you would put colons at the end because it's a while statement. Note that the F in false should be capitalized. For the 10th step, we want to write a statement that tells the player how many tries they have left. So it should be like, you have blank tries left. I don't think a for loop would be needed for this command. Maybe think about how we define tries in the beginning and what you could use here. It mostly just includes strings and the variable tries. Make sure to type done in the chat when you're done. Okay, so the answer to this would be print, and then in parentheses, you have, and then you could put a comma or you could put a plus. STR, which is stand for string, and then tries left plus tries. So we defined tries to be 10 in the beginning. So it would say you have 10 tries. For step number 11, we're going to write a command which will ask the user to enter a letter or a full word and store their input in a variable called guess. So like the question suggests, you do want to make sure that you use inputs and variables. Everyone make sure to write done in the chat when you're done. Okay, so this is what the answer would be. Our answer would be guess equals input. And in quotes and in parentheses, we would write, please enter one letter or the full word. So you don't have to write exactly that, but something that conveys the point where you're supposed to write one letter or a full word.
Okay, so the next steps are the first step, step 12 is going to be to determine if the input is greater than or equal to 1. So to do that, we're going to write 2 pieces of code. One is, okay, so you're going to try creating an if statement that checks if the value of their guess, so you're going to use the length function. So you're going to check if the length of their guess equals 1. And for checking, you're going to use 2 equal symbols. Remember, 1 equal symbol means your setting value and 2 equal symbols means you're checking. And you're also going to create an elif statement that checks if the guess is greater than or equal to 1. So just take like a minute to write that code, and I think you should have written some code that will give you some hints on this. It's just that you need to find the length of this. You need to find the length of their guess and check from there.
Can you go back a slide? I did not see that one.
Sure.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Aris, what's your question?
For step 11, does this have to be indented?
I'm pretty sure it's 1 line, so I'm not sure what you mean by indent.
Yeah, I don't think there's any indent in step 11.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, you can go on the next slide now.
Okay, we'll give everyone another minute to come up with their. Actually, if you're done with this step, can you type done in the chat so we can just see how many people are done, or if you need more time? Okay, I think. Wait, did anyone say they were finished? Okay, do you guys need to go back to step 11? Can everyone, okay, I don't know. I'm seeing a bunch of comments with like problems they have. I'm not sure if that's about step 12 or step 11 because step 12 code is here and it should work. If you need help with step 11, just send a message in the chat and we'll go back to that slide.
For the purpose of time, I guess we can move on to the next step and okay, someone needs to go to step 11. Artist, let us know when you're done looking at step 11.
Okay, I think everyone's good with step 11, right? Okay, just tell us now so we can clarify your questions and we don't get too far ahead. Okay, like I was saying, okay, step 12 is related to finding the length of your guess so we can differentiate between ones with multiple letters or just one. So we're gonna do that by using an if statement and then an elif statement right after. And the answer should be up now since we gave you guys some time to come up with it. Okay, so the first one, remember that a double equal sign is checking for the value. So it's basically gonna say, if their guess is the same as the number one, if the length of their guess is the same as number one, you can run your next piece of code. Or if the length of their guess is greater than or equal to one, we'll run a different piece of code. Okay, yeah, let's go to number 13 now. Okay. Okay, so now inside the if length of guess is one statement, we're gonna make another if elif statement that gives us three possibilities. So the three possibilities are the letter is in the word. So the guess, if let's say it's n, it's in the word, that should read true. If the letter is not in the word, it should read false. And then the letter is in the list of guessed letters. That's just basically saying repeat. And that's probably not going to be part of the return. Okay, you guys should be you guys should be working on this. It's fine if you don't understand it or you can't, or if you don't get the code. It's we'll go over it.
For the purpose of time, we'll show the solution to this step right now. But at the end, we will have a slide for you to check your code if you missed anything or you need to correct anything. So we will have a chance to go over this again.
Okay, I think that's enough time, so we can reveal the answer. So basically, we're gonna check if the guess is inside the word. So, okay, the first part is we're checking if the letter they guessed is inside the list of all the letters that they already guessed. The second one is checking if their letter is inside the word that is the right answer. And then the third the second elif statement is checking if that letter is not in the correct answer. So just make sure you have that in your code.
Okay, so hopefully we're done with all that. Let's move on to the next step. So we're going to need something to check if the letter was already guessed. The code should say letter was already guessed. So if you guys have any idea what we're supposed to do, could you type that in the chat? Or let me rephrase that. What would we need in order to check if a condition is true? I don't think that's the correct answer. What do you mean by we run it? You're on the right track, Benita, but we need something before we append to get onto the guest letters list. Okay, so we're going to need to check using an if statement, okay? So for step 14, we're going to create an if statement to check if guest is in guest letters. And then after that, we can append. Okay, so I would give you guys more time, but we're close to the end of our workshop, so we're gonna have to go really quickly. So this is what your if statement should look like, and we're going to use the if statement to check if guess has already been guessed. And if so, we're going to print something to the user, so to let the user know that they've already guessed that letter. And so now we can move on to step 15. So in this case, we need a different statement to check if the letter is in the word, and if it is, then we're going to print that the guess is in the word, okay? And we're going to append that onto the guest list.
Somebody has to go to step 13, so I'll go back really quick. Let me know when you're done looking at step 13. Okay, we'll go back now.
Okay, so we're going to have to move on now, but the code is going to be an else if statement, and we're going to have both a print statement and an append statement in it. And so finally, for step 16, where the guess is not in the code, we're going to have another condition, but this time we're going to, unlike the step 14, we're going to not only print that it's not part of the word, but we're going to append it onto the guest list.
Since we're kind of coming close to the end of our workshop, I think we'll start revealing the answers, and you can try to fix any errors or look over them later.
Okay, so in steps 17 through 19, we're going to finish up the program. So we already finished the code within the first if statement, so now we need to finish the code within the else if statement. The else if statement has a condition if length of the guess is greater than or equal to 1. So this means that we are writing code for when the user inputted more than just one letter, and this means we're trying to guess the word. So for step 17, we need to write a statement that checks if the guess that the user makes is equal to the chosen word. So remember to test for equality, we'll have to use the double equal sign. For the sake of time, I'm just going to reveal the answer for this step. The answer would be, we'd have to do if the guess is equal to the word. For step 18, we want to make it so that if the guess matches the word, the user gets some form of confirmation that they guessed the word correctly. So after the if statement, we'd write if guess equals the word, we'll print the string you have guessed the word, it is, and then close quotations plus the variable word. And the reason why we have to print the variable is because the selected word changes at random. It's not going to be the same each time. So we have to concatenate the string with the variable so that the appropriate word is displayed each time. So in total, we'd have the code print, you've guessed the word, it is close string plus word. The final step is that we have to make the variable guessed true. So to set the variable guessed to true, we'd write guessed equals true. This time we're going to use the single equal sign because we aren't testing for equality. We're trying to assign a new value to the variable. Now let's review the entire code to fill in any code that we might have missed.
So this is the first part of the entire code. This is not the entire thing. There are 3 total parts. This is the first 1/3. So check this part to make sure you have no errors or any typos in your code. And let us know in the chat when you're done checking this part of your code so that we can move to the next slide. Since we are running low on time, I'll move to the next slides. But if anyone wants to check their code even after the workshop, make sure you fill out the form to get a copy of this slide so that you can look at it in your own time. This is the second part of the full code. I'll leave this here for around a minute. Okay, I'll now move on to the next. This should be the final part of your code.
Can you go back?
Oh, sure. To this slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, now we'll move on to the next
I have
group.
a problem of the guess one.
Yes.
It doesn't work.
What?
It says it's an error.
You run it or
I did run it.
At the
would
end of the workshop, we'll be sending out a form where you can fill it out and get a copy of these slides. So you can go back on your own time and fill in any gaps that you might need.
Okay.
okay, this is the final part of the code. All right, we'll move on to the next slide now. All right, so now that you've hopefully reviewed your code, if you have reviewed your code and you think there are no errors, you can feel free to test your program and try to play your game. We'll give you guys around a minute to do this, but you can also do this after class. Since we're low on time right now, artists, it may be a little bit difficult to go back a slide, but we can send out the slides later so that you can look through it. Okay, you guys can also continue to test your programs after class. For now, thank you everyone for attending our workshop. I know a lot of you might not have gotten a chance to correct your errors for the code. So if you would like to get a copy of our slides in order to keep track of all the concepts and all the programs, you can fill out this form, tinyurl.com/mx6v844t. We will also be putting it in the chat. And if you'd like to contact us, you can feel free to email us at siliconvalley.astepahead@gmail.com. And you can also visit our website, siliconvalleyastep.wixsite.com/astepahead. And finally, does anybody have any questions or concerns that they want to discuss? We'll open it up to the participants now. Thank you for coming, everyone. Make sure you do fill out the form if you would like to get access to the slides, because I know a lot of you still need to correct your errors or add things to your program.
Also, feel free to explore our website. The link is posted in the chat as well.
Yes, it's siliconvalleyastep.wixsite.com/a-step-head. And if you have any questions, you can also contact us through email or website. We have a contact form on our website as well. And if there are no questions or concerns left, then you can feel free to leave the call.